Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Juggun Kazim, and I've come all the way from Pakistan. Thank you to Walrus for inviting me to talk about creativity and constraint. Most of us grew up with the idea that creativity and constraints are opposites, like fire and water. That what a true artist needs is actually a blank page, the freedom to do whatever he or she needs. Well, I've learned to disagree. Art is about choices, what to say, what not to say, and how not to say it. But more choices don't always make us happier or freer. Some years ago, there was even a book called The Paradox of Choice, about how people buy more stuff when given less choice. We see this paradox in the arts the whole time. Take poetry. Yes, you can write free poetry in which nothing rhymes. But there have been many great poets who chose to work within a particular form. Shakespeare wrote sonnets, Ghalib wrote ghazals. I'm an actor, and I'm a woman. I live in a country where being either of those two can be a pretty big problem sometimes. Every day, I go on air live in front of an audience of millions. I host a breakfast show from 9 to 11. Like all television hosts, I have to work within certain constraints. But because I work for a state-owned channel, I work with even more constraints than others. The first year of hosting my breakfast show, Morning with Juggun, I would often sit on the floor of my bathroom, crying and shaking with frustration because I couldn't talk about any of the things that really mattered to me. Or at least I felt needed to be brought into focus in a place like Pakistan. Violence against women and children, breast cancer awareness, because you can't talk about, well, you can't use the word breast on air, technically. Child molestation, rape, minority rights, the list goes on and on. I kept feeling really sorry for myself, and as a result I would go on air every day and I would function almost on autopilot and talk about things without any real emotion or sincerity. Then it dawned on me one day, I was using my constraints as an excuse to be lazy and uncreative. So I took things and I turned them on their head. The topics I could actually talk about, I researched to death with my content team and on my own personal time as well. Over time, as the viewers got hooked, I would plug in slowly and gently the things that actually mattered to me and actually, to be very honest, that mattered to the rest of the world. You see, now more than ever, people have total control over what they want to see or be exposed to in the media. So it's a breakfast show, music, film, or even a commercial. People have choices. All they have to do is switch a channel, block you out on social media, walk out of the cinema, or just change the track on the iPod. You have to work within the framework of your constraints and create something meaningful, beautiful, and at the same time interesting to your audience. That's the challenge. It's an uphill battle. But once you get the hang of it, the journey becomes fairly smooth. In the case of my morning show, I realized that the one luxury I had working with the state broadcaster was that I could happily ignore all the stunts that other morning show anchors were doing. In the case of Pakistan, that meant week-long shows on Pakistani weddings with dances and singing and honestly the kind of craziness I wouldn't want to get into. Exorcism specials, where you would get rid of the guests' demons on air for a week, the whole week. And the old staple in the subcontinental television realm, the never-ending drama between the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law, which I think exists in the West as well. But anyway, instead of all that, I started focusing on the current health issues in the country, up close and personal. A woman that I admire immensely, the whole world does, Oprah-type interviews with celebrities, bringing on high achievers and people of all economic backgrounds and celebrating their lives, the real heroes out there. People who are not really regular because they're extraordinary, because they are people. Well, so as a result, the people started relating to the show more and more. I've seen many morning show hosts come and go. But fortunately, I've been with the state channel where honestly, when I went in, people were like, good God, I don't know what she's going to do. She went abroad to study. She speaks in English. How will she communicate? But anyway, it's been 3 years and I signed on for another 3. And it's a channel in which you speak actually only in Urdu, which is the language that we speak in Pakistan. It's been a challenge because I've actually relearned how to speak my own language because I've spoken in English so much. Anyway, getting back to the subject. In the middle of all of this, however, I didn't give up on the things that I wanted to get across. So when it came to breast cancer, my solution was to talk about cancer without actually using the word breast. I invited women doctors, experts, and talked about how women women over 40 need to get themselves screened, and at any stage if you feel something's wrong, go and get yourself checked. I know this sounds very, very basic over here, but in Pakistan it's a step. It's a baby step. But sometimes you do need to hold a hand and get people forward. I just find that when you push boundaries and when you try and force change onto people, sometimes people get very, very upset. On a less serious note, social constraints are equally an issue when it comes to acting in locally produced films and dramas. How do you show love or emotion or intimacy when actors are not allowed to touch each other, let alone kiss? Well, there are many different ways. The old-fashioned way is to translate feelings into words. Have the hero romance the heroine with wit and passion. I'm talking about very traditional stuff. Don't mean to offend anyone. This is Pakistan I'm talking about. Another way is to change your acting style. When you do films in the West, you're told to act smaller. I remember when I started working in Canada initially, I was constantly told, make your character smaller, it's too big. Well, in Pakistan, you have to act large. We have to overact and emphasize emotions with words and gestures. Like Norma Desmond in Sunset Boulevard, we have to learn to break hearts with just one look. I want to repeat the point I made a bit earlier. We are taught too often that constraints are terrible things, and that every time somebody tries to stop us, we must bulldoze our way through and change the system. Bring about a revolution. I'm not saying that it's wrong. I'm just saying that there are other ways. When I first joined the media, I used to challenge every constraint and scream as loud as I could against it. But people don't like screaming. They don't like confrontation. Many of them simply tune out. What I've learned now is that nudges can be just as effective as pushes. That working for change within a system is often more useful than railing against the system. Or as they say back home, focus on eating the fruit, not counting the trees. So don't be afraid of constraints. As the saying goes, necessity is the mother of invention. If you embrace constraints and if you embrace challenges, you will become a better artist. Only when one is limited can one begin the journey to becoming completely limitless. This is something I heard on a TED Talk recently. I don't want to take credit for it. You will be forced to look within yourself and to use all of your skills. That will be good for you and your art, no matter what your art may be. Thank you.